In 1988, it looked like science had finally closed the book on one of history's greatest mysteries. 3 top-tier laboratories ran a carbon-14 dating test on the Shroud of Turin, the linen cloth believed by millions to be the burial garment of Jesus. The results seemed clear. The cloth wasn't from the 1st century, but a medieval forgery created between 1260 and 1390 AD. The headlines screamed fake, fraud, and hoax. For decades, that was pretty much the final word. But what if that definitive test wasn't so definitive after all? What if the tiny sample of cloth that was tested wasn't representative of the rest of the shroud? Today, the debate is roaring back to life. A wave of new evidence, from advanced chemical analysis to groundbreaking dating methods, is seriously challenging the 1988 conclusion. Researchers are now pointing to a 1st century origin and an image formed by an event of incredible energy. The case closed moment has become the start of a brand new scientific dogfight, and the story it's uncovering is more complex and fascinating than anyone imagined. The 1988 carbon dating was supposed to settle it once and for all. A small strip of linen was cut from a corner of the shroud, divided, and then sent to labs in Oxford, Zurich, and Arizona. When they all came back with a near-identical date range squarely in the Middle Ages, the conclusion felt inescapable. The shroud wasn't a 2,000-year-old relic, but a masterful piece of medieval deception. The case, it seemed, was closed. But almost right away, some scientists began raising red flags. The biggest issue was the sample itself. The original plan recommended taking samples from multiple areas to get a fair result. Instead, in a last-minute change, only one sample was taken. It came from a corner that had been handled for centuries and was known to have been repaired after a fire. This is where the official story starts to get complicated. Years before the carbon dating, the Shroud of Turin research project, STURP, had photographed the cloth under ultraviolet light. Those photos showed that the very corner used for the 1988 test had a different chemical glow from the main cloth, a clear warning sign that it might not be original linen. A key chemist from the STURP team, Ray Rogers, couldn't let this go. Years later, he got his hands on leftover threads from that 1988 sample. What he found, published in the peer-reviewed journal Thermochimica Acta, was a bombshell. Rogers discovered that the sample threads were chemically different from the rest of the shroud. They were interwoven with cotton and coated with a plant gum, materials not found on the main body of the cloth. His conclusion was a powerful challenge. The labs had accurately dated the sample they were given, but that sample was from a medieval patch, expertly rewoven to repair the ancient cloth. While this theory remains debated, it cracked open a case that many had considered shut. With the 1988 carbon-14 results now facing serious questions, the race was on to find other ways to determine the shroud's age. In recent years, several independent studies using new technologies have produced some startlingly different results. In 2022, a team of Italian researchers, led by Dr. Liberato De Caro, used a method called wide-angle X-ray scattering, WAX-S. Instead of measuring carbon decay, WAX-S analyzes how the linen's cellulose structure has broken down over time. They applied it to a thread from the shroud, and in an article published in the journal Heritage, reported that the method dated the cloth to approximately 2,000 years ago, a result compatible with the time of Christ. However, this method is new, not widely used for dating, and its reliability is still a subject of scientific debate. But it's not the only one. Professor Giulio Fanti of the University of Padua used 3 different techniques, 2 chemical and 1 mechanical, to analyze the degradation of the linen fibers. He reported an average date of 33 BC, plus or minus 250 years, again pointing directly to the 1st century. Even the linen's basic chemistry has been used to estimate its age. Ray Rogers pointed out that linen contains vanillin, a chemical that disappears over centuries. He found vanillin in the 1988 sample, confirming its medieval origin. But when he tested threads from the shroud's main body, he found no vanillin at all, suggesting the cloth was much older, estimating an age between 1,300 and 3,000 years. While these alternative dating methods have not achieved broad scientific consensus, they add intriguing and contradictory layers to the debate, suggesting the mystery is far from solved. Beyond the dating controversy, the shroud holds a trove of forensic information that continues to baffle scientists. The STURP team confirmed the stains on the cloth are real human blood, and it tells a grim story. First, the blood type was identified as AB, which is more common in the Middle East than in Europe. But the truly surprising finding was what else was in the blood. Biochemists found exceptionally high levels of bilirubin, a substance the body produces under extreme trauma, like that from a violent scourging and crucifixion. Proponents of the shroud's authenticity argue that a medieval forger would have no knowledge of bilirubin, let alone how to spike blood with it. The bloodstains themselves also show strange properties. Under UV light, many of the stains have fluorescent halos, which are serum rings. This indicates the blood came from a body that had both pre- and post-mortem wounds. Some blood had clotted, while other fluids separated out after death. This detail eerily matches the gospel accounts of a crucified man. The question that forensic experts still debate is whether any forger could have known about these subtle medical details, let alone been able to replicate them. The convergence of all this new evidence is reopening a mystery that science thought it had solved. If you're fascinated by how modern science is revealing ancient truths, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon. We're dedicated to bringing you the latest research on the world's greatest historical enigmas. Let us know in the comments what piece of evidence you find most compelling. If the shroud did originate in the 1st century Middle East, it should carry evidence of its journey. Skeptics long pointed to its first documented appearance in France in the 1350s as proof it was made in Europe. But the cloth itself seems to hold a microscopic map of its travels. In the 1970s, Swiss criminologist Dr. Max Frey lifted pollen grains off the shroud using sticky tape. His analysis, later supported by botanists like Dr. Avinoam Danan, identified pollen from dozens of plants. While some were European, a significant number came from plants unique to the Middle East. They found a heavy concentration of pollen from a thorny plant called Gundelia tourneforti, which blooms near Jerusalem in the spring. This evidence suggests the shroud was once exposed to the air in that specific region. However, like other evidence, the pollen findings are debated. Critics point out the risk of contamination over centuries and have questioned Frey's methodology. Adding another layer, analysis of dirt particles found near the nose, knees, and feet revealed a specific type of limestone, travertine aragonite, which perfectly matched samples taken from ancient tombs in Jerusalem. Proponents argue a European forger would have no way to get this detail right, while critics again raise concerns about contamination. Perhaps the greatest mystery of all is the image itself. It's not a painting, scorch, or photograph. The original STURP team proved the image sits on the very top microfibers of the linen, penetrating to a depth of only a few hundred nanometers, thinner than a human hair. It's so superficial that no one has been able to explain how it was made. So how was it formed? Italian scientists at ENEA, Italy's Agency for New Technologies, tried for years to replicate it. They failed. The only way they could create a similar, incredibly shallow coloration on linen was by using powerful ultraviolet excimer lasers. Their conclusion, while highly speculative, was mind-bending. They hypothesized that the image could have been formed by a powerful burst of ultraviolet radiation. The energy required, they calculated, would be immense, far beyond anything a medieval forger could produce. While it remains just one hypothesis among many, it highlights the central problem. The image on the shroud has features that modern science still struggles to explain, let alone replicate. For years, the Shroud of Turin was largely dismissed by the scientific mainstream, filed away as a medieval fake based on one famous test. But today, science itself is telling a much more complicated story. The 1988 carbon date remains the most widely cited result from a major scientific journal, but it's no longer the only voice in the room. New dating methods, while not yet mainstream, suggest a radically different age. Forensic analysis of the blood reveals medically specific details that challenge the idea of a simple forgery. The pollen and dust, though contested, hint at a journey beginning in Jerusalem. And the image itself remains a scientific puzzle, pointing to a possible burst of energy that we can't explain. The narrative that science had definitively proven the shroud a fake has given way to a much more interesting reality. Science is in a deep and fascinating debate with itself. It has not proven this is the burial cloth of Jesus Christ, but it has shown that the cloth is profoundly mysterious. The shroud was once seen as a question of faith versus science. Now, it seems science is providing the very evidence that forces us all to ask, what exactly is this thing? But just when the mystery seemed solved, the 1988 carbon dating result started to face serious heat. Proponents of the shroud's authenticity immediately questioned the sample itself. The single sample was snipped from a corner of the shroud, known to have been handled for centuries and repaired by nuns after a fire in 1532. The argument was that the labs might have dated a medieval patch, not the original cloth. This repair hypothesis got a huge boost from chemist Raymond Rogers, a member of the original STURP team. In a 2005 paper, he analyzed leftover material from the 88 sample and found it contained cotton intertwined with the linen, while the rest of the shroud is pure linen. He also found dye and gum, which he argued was evidence of a medieval repair. However, it's also true that the labs performed cleaning treatments on the samples using acids and other solvents, which they reported had no significant effect on the results. In the years since, other dating methods have produced results that fly in the face of the 1988 findings. In 2013, Giulio Fanti used infrared light and mechanical tests to date the shroud to a period between 300 BC and 400 AD. More recently, a new technique called wide-angle X-ray scattering, WAX, has entered the ring. A 2022 study published in the journal Heritage used WAXS to measure the natural aging of the linen's cellulose. Researchers compared a thread from the shroud to a linen sample from Masada, Israel, dated to the 1st century AD. They found the shroud sample's degradation was fully compatible with the 2,000-year-old fabric from Masada. This research gained fresh media attention in 2024, suggesting the shroud is much, much older than the carbon dating proposed. Even if we could settle the dating controversy, the biggest question still hangs in the air. How was the image formed? This is a problem that, to this day, has no accepted scientific explanation. The STURP team's conclusion that it wasn't a painting, scorch, or any known artistic technique has largely held up. The image's bizarre properties, its photographic negativity, its extreme superficiality, and its 3D encoding defy easy answers. Theories are all over the map, from the mundane to the miraculous. Some suggest natural chemical processes, like a reaction between ammonia vapors from a corpse and the cloth. Others have proposed an artist could have pressed a heated statue onto the linen. Then you have the more exotic theories, which sound like something out of science fiction. These ideas venture into the realm of physics, proposing that some form of radiation created the image. Physicist John Jackson, from the STURP team, has hypothesized that a burst of intense vacuum ultraviolet radiation could have discolored the cloth in just the right way to explain its superficial and 3D properties. A process like that would take billions of watts of energy. This theory is scientifically untestable and borders on the supernatural, with some suggesting it was a byproduct of the resurrection itself. For many, the mystery of the image is even more profound than the question of its age. As the STURP team wrote in their final report, the problem remains unsolved. So where does that leave us with the Shroud of Turin? The evidence is a tangled, contradictory mess. On one hand, we have a burial cloth with blood and wounds that forensically match crucifixion accounts. We have an image that isn't a painting, has mysterious photographic and 3D qualities that no one can replicate, and multiple modern dating methods suggesting it's 2,000 years old. And on the other hand, we have the gold standard of radiocarbon dating, performed by 3 top-tier labs, which concluded the cloth was made in the Middle Ages. We also have historical documents from that same period from people who were convinced it was a fraud. Is the Shroud of Turin the authentic burial cloth of Jesus, bearing a miraculous imprint, or is it an impossibly clever medieval forgery, a work of art so sophisticated it has stumped scientists for over a century? The battle between faith and skepticism rages on, and the shroud itself remains a silent witness, holding its secrets close. The final verdict, it seems, is left to you. If you love diving into historical mysteries where faith and science collide, make sure you subscribe and ring that notification bell. We'll be back with more deep dives into the world's most enigmatic artifacts.
This book is your beginner's guide to understanding Scripture. Find peace, build relationships, and discover purpose in today's world. Ready to decode the Bible? Find Bible Decoded available on Amazon now.
If this content blesses you and you'd like to support our mission, you can buy me a coffee or give a super thanks. Every contribution helps us create more content to inspire and uplift others. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on my future videos.